Coming up tonight, I have Liz Jackman from Whiskey's Wish, a charity organisation that trains service dogs. Right after Liz, I have Nettie. Nettie has been a very, very, very busy mum. Come and find out why. She'll be on a little bit later. Don't go anywhere. We're going to start in just a moment. Welcome to the Animals Television Show, everyone. I'm your host, Romy Bueller, and we are at episode 8. How did that happen? 2 months have gone already. Great show for you coming up. I have Liz Jackman from Whiskey's Wish coming up first. Now, Liz is the co-founder of this charity organisation that trains service dogs for veterans, first responders and correctional officers. I'm really looking forward to you hearing from her shortly. Right after Liz, I have Nettie. Now, Nettie is 9 and she's had 21 guide dog puppies. I'm exhausted just hearing about that. She's a little bit later on. First up, let's go and have a chat to Liz. Welcome, Liz. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Animals Television Show. I'm really looking forward to having a chat to you and hearing more about your absolutely fabulous charity organisation called Whiskey's Wish. Can you first up just take our viewers through a little bit about the organisation and how it started and what it's all about?
Sure. Thanks, Romy. Thanks for having me on here. So Whiskey's Wish started in 2014. So my husband, Scott, as a veteran, was injured when he came home from deployment in Afghanistan. And he was given an assistance dog called Whiskey, who was trained at the Bathurst Correctional Facility. Unfortunately, Whiskey passed away from cancer, so it wasn't able to be cured. And it was a great loss to Scott because this dog really, really did truly save his life. We can do as families and lots of support groups and that can help as much as we can, but the love of an animal is and what they can do is totally different, and Whiskey certainly proved that for us. So what happened was with the group that had supplied Whiskey and that wasn't very supportive, unfortunately. They didn't kind of have a plan for what happens when, unfortunately, these dogs do pass away. And it left us quite disillusioned as to that continued support. So we crazily decided that we would start our own charity or group to assist people in a sort of a similar situation. And when we first started, it was only supposed to be for Army veterans. But when obviously there was a great need out there, and I can talk about that a little bit later, but there is a great need for the assistance that people need through the rehabilitation through animals. But we then sort of said, okay, well, we'll do it as tri-services. So that will be Navy, Air Force and Army. So, and we had a plan where we would only have sort of like, in our first year, 2 dogs. Then in our second year, maybe 5 dogs. And then in our third year, probably about 20 dogs that we would be training, etc. Because we weren't trainers at that stage. We had basically, I think the biggest prerequisite of any trainer is that you've got to love animals.
Yes.
So we certainly had that, and we certainly knew how to take care of them, etc. But that kind of grew with the program where we, contracted trainers to assist us, etc. What we didn't expect was the massive need that was out there. So what happened was in our first year, we actually ended up with, I think it was probably about 15 to 20 people in the program.
Wow.
And then in our second year, that doubled. And then in our third year, it had gotten to about 60 people in the program. We're now, this will be our 7th year. So we have 140 people in the program, and that's all around Australia.
Right.
And though we get a massive amount of inquiries for our program, but we have now made it quite strict, so to speak. And also because initially we were self-funded. So it was Scott and I that mainly self-funded the charity and the work. We were fortunate towards the end of 2019 where the federal government actually provided us with a grant to develop our training program.
Excellent.
But then COVID hit. So, and like most charities and areas, unfortunately, the tap got turned off. But they kept us going up until June this year. We've been able to continue. So we're a little bit different to most organisations in that when the recipient, because that's what we call them recipients. We don't call them clients because they don't pay anything. So all the training, all the assessment, all the equipment, support, etc., is all at no cost. So we've been really fortunate to be able to keep going through some very generous donations, fundraisers, and that and volunteers that assist us as well.
What is the process that you go through? Do you select the dogs for the recipients, or do they have a dog that you're training, or how does that actually work?
Yeah, so it's quite different. And this is what happened when we first started was we, because Whiskey was a beautiful big blue cattle dog, we actually had communicated with a breeder. So we were actually going to train up these lovely blue cattle dogs to become kind of like the signature, I guess, of Whiskey's Wish. But what we actually found was that, and I think it was kind of a missing element at the start as well with a lot of other organisations, is that most people associate assistance animals like guide dogs and that with either being Labradors or Golden Retrievers.
Yes.
But in actual fact, most dogs actually can become really, really good assistance animals. So we found that some initially with a lot of people that were coming into the program, they had their own dog and their dogs were great and actually required very little little of that initial training.
Right.
And the bond was already there, which is
Yes.
a really, really important part of any training. So we found that it was easier because the dog already had an initial bond with that person, so it was easier to train. Whereas if you go by the guide dog model, which is when they get a puppy, then they use foster carers for that dog, and it can be between 18 months to 2 years of a family or anybody fostering that dog and going through that initial training, and then having to match that dog after a while to someone, and it may not work. So there's a massive I don't know what to call them, failure rate of that program. There are a lot of what they call rejected guide dogs, but they're actually quite good. It's they're only being rejected because they haven't that missing link, which is the bond, hasn't occurred with that participant or that person in the program. So with us, it kind of became a little bit of a no-brainer that the program really works because people are coming in and bringing their own dog into the program. So they've already got that initial bond, understanding with their dog. They know their dog, but then we had to set some other parameters in place. So we can't just say, well, just because you've got a great relationship with your dog doesn't mean that your dog's going to make a great service dog. It actually has to go through some other set criteria. We do have some people that come into the program or inquire about the program and they don't have a dog. Prior to COVID, we had a lot of amazing people, breeders, as well as rescue places that would donate a dog or a puppy to our program. Sometimes we do get someone who will say, look, I don't have a dog at the moment. Can you recommend a breeder? Or and sometimes we might be lucky where we have someone who will tell us, hey, look, I've got a little border collie puppy, or I'm getting a litter of these dogs and I'd like to donate one of the dogs to the program. So that's how we get them sometimes as well.
Oh, that's great. Perhaps you could just talk to us a little bit about what are the dogs actually trained to look out for or to help with?
What we do is, and it's a big part of what our charity and organisation, so over time it's developed. So initially our program was basically, and it still is, a big part of it is to support and train the dogs to assist, veterans, first responders and correctional officers in our program. But what we found through that training with a lot of those recipients was what was happening out in public, and the misunderstanding, that misconception about what an assistance animal is. And so they were coming into the program, they wanted the dog to be trained to pick up on certain triggers or to help mitigate their disability. But what they found was when they did go out in public, there was a bit of a resistance, misunderstanding and discrimination, really. When we do so it's very different from private dog training sessions. I've done private dog training sessions, very, very different. So it's not the sit, drop and stay, even though that's really, really important. But we do a lot of role play and simulation of what these guys and girls will have to do when they actually go out in public. So we might simulate, like, if you're if they're stepping into an elevator, for example, and they'll have, 3 or 4 different types of people. So you always get that person who's really, really excited to see a puppy dog. Okay.
Yes.
And so they're very high pitched and very, very excited. Oh, I want to play with your dog. And so we then, we make an observation of how our recipients actually react to those situations. And then we've got other people who'll be like, you can't bring that dog in here, and etc. So we do a lot of that role play, and we get the reaction and observation from a lot of our recipients. And what we then do is we actually educate the public. We also teach the recipients that they have to have respect for the establishments that they visit, but also that we try and tell the businesses as well that they also have to have respect for these people. Biggest thing is in teaching people to please leave these guys alone with the dogs. They just want to be able to go to, it doesn't necessarily have to be in a shopping centre. It could be going to a medical appointment. It could be traveling on a train, whatever. But they don't want to be asked 1,000 times as to why they have the dog. So part of our training there as well is with a lot of the veterans in particular that have PTSD, is that social anxiety, that hypervigilance.
Yeah.
So the dogs are trained to help pick up on a lot of that. And then we task train them to do things such as what they call buffering or crowd control, and for them to lean in and provide like deep pressure therapy to their recipient so that their anxiety levels go down. So it sends off like a bit of a chemical reaction to their brain for them to kind of calm down, understand what to do. But the dogs are also learn to lead out,
Right.
to lead out to an exit, to give them a bit of an exit strategy if they're feeling very, if they're highly anxious, etc. So PTSD has a lot of triggers, and it's very, very hard to just pinpoint one. It could be anything. So for Scott, for example, some of his triggers could be like burning smell.
Right.
And for others, it could be the sound of like fireworks or anything. It really depends on the situation or where that trauma actually originated from as well. And we've done a couple of education seminars and sessions. We want to bring them out to the public a bit more. We've actually done some with mental health professionals now.
Okay.
Because they're the biggest referral service. So when someone comes in and says, I'd really like to have a dog to help me, with, so it's not just with PTSD, but also with service-related injuries. So we have a few people, for example, who are amputees that might have other mobility issues as well, TBI, so traumatic brain injury, etc. The majority, though, have either major depressive disorder or PTSD. But the biggest referral service actually comes from psychiatrists and clinical psychologists. We actually have to educate them. I've had some really interesting conversations with some of these people. My psychiatrist or my psych says that having a dog would be great because then I can do this and I can do that. The first question we ask is, what is it that you want your dog to do for you? Your dog actually, our job, that's what the program is about. Our job is to actually help you train your dog to do this, and for you to, recognise those signs. And by design, our program sort of led into something else, which was what we started to notice was that a lot of the recipients really enjoyed training their dogs. They became their own trainers. They every time they were able to do something, like if they got their dog to look, even if they got their dog to sit, drop, and stay, they would be really, really excited. It was a huge achievement for them, and to get that positive feedback and encouragement became part of their rehabilitation as well. So we started to get some fantastic feedback from those psychiatrists and psychologists saying that, they really enjoy coming out to the training. They really enjoy that interaction. They enjoy that, that they're achieving something. So that we don't take their dog and train their dog to retrieve or pick up medication or to open doors or anything like that. We show the recipients how they can train their dog to do that for them. Because everything, so every time someone applies for our program, it's an individualized program for them, because not everybody wants to teach their dog how to open a door. Not every person in the program needs their dog to, pull their wheelchair up a ramp or to, open drawers or retrieve medication or to apply deep pressure therapy. So when we get these people to apply for the program, we ask them to think of 3 things that they would like their dog to be trained to do to help mitigate their disability. And the majority of the people in our program, the biggest one is that buffer, which is because they're so hypervigilant and they've got that high anxiety. So that's probably one of the biggest tasks that we train them in, deep pressure therapy. We have a lot of people in our program who are slightly deaf as well.
Oh,
so
yes.
the dog serves as an alert by either nudging. But we have some people in our program who can have, they've got their dogs trained to 9 tasks and they want to keep training their dog. And so what we started to see was this is really good because we've engaged these people in the training. And it's not just a matter of putting a jacket on a dog and saying, here you go, off you go, good luck. We take social responsibility there for every dog, every one of our dogs that has a jacket. We take responsibility for that. We've had over 200 inquiries since January for our program.
Right.
Remember I said at the start, we've only got 140 people in our program. Of those 200, I think it's probably about 20 that are following through, and we've got another 9 pending coming in.
Right.
What happened to all those others? The first question they always ask is, that sounds too hard. I just want to be able to go and do this. I just want to be, I want to be able to, take my dog into a shopping centre, or I want to be able to fly with my dog or whatever. They don't want to kind of understand that responsibility. But we have, as an organisation and as trainers, we have a responsibility. So if we put a jacket on a dog, so if I've assessed that dog as being suited, so they first start off with an in-training jacket, because every dog is always in training.
P plates.
It's almost
or the L's.
Or learner plates. Yes,
Yeah.
learner plates initially. So when they first start off, it's the reason why we do make it a little bit hard, but we make it fun for them as well. But they understand that process is because at the end of the day, the organisation is actually responsible, not them. So we have to advocate on their behalf. So when these people do go somewhere and they're being discriminated against, that recipient can give us a call and we will go into bat for them.
Okay,
and, we've been very, very successful with human rights. So we've, over the 7 years, we've mediated on behalf of a lot of recipients who have been discriminated against, quite some surprising, supermarkets, large supermarket chains, TAFEs, universities, hospitals, and we've won every single one because we have guidelines and processes, and we've given those recipients a responsibility because they've had to follow a process. It's not just, here you go, here's a jacket. These guys know that there's an etiquette involved and a responsibility. When they take their dog out, they know that the dog has to be well groomed. It has to be up to date with all its vaccinations, because that's a responsibility to the public as well. Yes. The dog has to continue to be trained in the most basic of obedience, which is your sit, drop, stay, in all different levels of distraction training, and also for them to understand the task that's involved. So if they're triggered by something, that the dog is then able to be task trained so that they can take the dog out anywhere. Most people think that having an assistance dog is just in being able to take a dog out into public. A lot of the tasks that the dogs actually do are actually at home. So for a lot of veterans, as an example, it's waking them up from nightmares. So that's a huge task that they perform. A lot of it could be, as that example, opening doors. So we have a lot of people who have dexterity issues. Look, it could be anything. There's over 400 tasks that a dog can do.
That's incredible.
I believe and Scott will probably kill me when I say this, but I believe I've gotten so dogs actually do things intuitively as well. So I always have to specify as part of our dog training that we know that dogs do things intuitively, which means they offer certain behaviours. Now, I have a bit of a problem with Scott snoring sometimes. And so during the night, I used to I'll kind of, just stop snoring.
Turn over.
Now, I don't know whether Sophie has picked up on my frustration level here because I'm just too tired to do. She actually does that for me now. So she will
that's perfect.
actually put her paws and actually almost like push on Scott. And so Scott will go, he's a lot nicer to her than he is to me on that one. But it's a really good example of how, so with the waking from nightmares, a lot of the people that apply for our program actually say, I'd like my dog to be recognised as a service dog because the dog already wakes me from nightmares. That's an intuitive task that a dog can do. So that intuitiveness is they offer that behaviour, or dogs are amazing because they can pick up on so many things. They really, really are our best friends. They really know when we're not ourselves, when we're not the best. The problem that happens most of the time is that we don't know how to pick up on those signals or how to embrace it. And so part of that dog training, for service dog training, is actually saying, you know what your dog's trying to tell you? Your dog's actually trying to tell you this. And now we're going to put a cue to it so that it becomes a mitigated task in order for it to be recognised as a service dog. Because even though a dog can intuitively do, the sky's the limit here, it can do as many tasks as it wants. To be recognised as a service dog, it has to be done on cue. That means it's if you tell the dog, front, in order for it to become a buffer, the dog should automatically just do it. It doesn't matter where or when, that's the task.
Yeah.
A dog can be trained to do something. It's called a sweep. No, they don't sweep the floor. It's called a sweep.
That's a shame.
I think you can. I do make a joke with some people where I say you can actually train a dog to do your washing. Yes, you can. And it's done quite often with people who are in wheelchairs or have they can pick up pegs, for example, or sort the washing so they can put it into the wash. Dogs can do anything. Trained well, they can do anything. But what we do say to people is when they say, oh, I'd like to train my dog to, do the washing, I say, why can't you do that yourself? You actually have to have it so that it's mitigating a disability, not because it's a fun thing to do as well. Because I tell people this a lot too. Dogs love to learn, and if trained right and you make it a game, it's amazing what you can get a dog to do. You can get them to do anything. Scott had his Roxy. She was a beautiful blue girl who unfortunately she passed away last year as well. But when Scott had a procedure done on his back, and he used to sort of tug with his foot with the hose to kind of pick it up because he couldn't bend down to pick it up.
Right.
Intuitively, Roxy actually did it. So because he made it a game. And so then she started to, and then what Scott did was he put a cue to it. And so then she would just do it all the time because she was getting rewarded for it. And so it became a task. So that's what we do as part of our training. We kind of say to them, have a look at what your dog actually already does for you. Tell us how that makes you feel, whether it's actually doing something good for you, and let's put a cue to it so that when you're out in a situation where you might find like really high anxiety or any triggers, that you can just say the word, or it could be like a tap tap, and your dog will automatically know what to do because it's trained to do that. So, and
Right.
because
Yeah.
it's a game, it always thinks it's a game. I'll just
Yeah.
explain the sweep one for you. It's kind of like intruder alert. So
Okay.
if you come to your front door and you've just come home from somewhere, you open your front door, you actually tell your dog to sweep. So what the dog does is it goes into each room. If the dog barks, you'll recall your dog back, close the door, and then call 000, because that means you've
Right.
got someone in there. Something is not quite right in the house. So your
Yes.
dogs will pick up on it. And so that's done through scent training as well. There's a lot of scenarios. It's not something like we say, look, look, we can help train your dog to do this, but you've got to put in the time to do it. And you've got to make it fun. There's an investment of time. And that's what we've found with the program, and that, people are enjoying doing that. It's become part of their rehabilitation. Some of them we're reaching that full accreditation. They actually turn around and say to us, we want to become dog trainers because we want to do this. We want to pay it forward because we really enjoy doing this.
What is the care for the dog? Does it have massages and chiropractics and nutritional programs? Does someone teach them all of the things that they should be doing for their dog to be able to keep up and manage their jobs?
What we mainly do is in the training, but and quite often we're asked certain things in relation to nutrition or vet care or anything like that. So we basically say to make sure you have like a really good vet. Because we're all over Australia, it's very hard to just kind of go, well, we've got this one person or this one person. We would rather that they find themselves, or if they've used a very good vet, who really, in that respect, should have, in relation to their, physical health, should be able to assist them 100% in that.
What's your biggest stumbling block, do you find, with the training? Or, is it a particular breed of dog or a
People,
so
just people.
yes. That was a dumb
Train,
question, wasn't it? It always goes back to the people.
yeah. I mean, I think any dog trainer will say to you, actually, it's really, really easy training the dogs. It's just training people. A lot of people want to get that jacket really, really quick, and they think that it's the solution to, that whole problem. But it's a band-aid, really.
Yeah.
It has to come with responsibility. So that's what we train in the responsibility of what that jacket actually means. We understand that a lot of them, want to be able to do things, and that they think that by having that jacket is going to open up, so many doors. Unfortunately, we have to say to them, well, you actually have to train your dog to do certain things, and it has to do them in so many different environments. And a service dog is so totally different to training, a normal working dog or your pet dog, because it's going to be exposed to areas that a dog normally wouldn't be allowed to go to. So we don't want your dog to be overwhelmed. It needs to learn the process. This is what we're training. This is what we're helping you train. But also with a lot of them, they have very, very high expectations. They get very, very wound up.
Right.
So I do make a joke during training sessions where I should actually be like a yoga or meditation teacher. And so I should teach them how to breathe at the start and go, please
Yes.
relax. And just because the more wound up you are, the more hyper your dog will be. Like they'll be wound up because they'll be kind of constantly on alert. Whereas you need to actually just really, really relax. You don't have to tell your dog off. You don't have to speak to people. Just go from here to over there and just do nothing. Like just say nothing and watch what happens. Your dog will just fall into step with you if you kind of, and because it's also teaching them to, kind of reduce that stress and anxiety as well. So that's the stumbling block is a lot of people, like in training the dog, their expectations are that their dog should be able to sit, drop, and stay by day 3.
Yeah.
But like people, all dogs are different. They all learn differently, very much
Yes.
like people. It's everything is a learning process. And the other thing I don't like is when they make comparisons. So they might come to a group training session and they'll see a dog that's kind of advanced to a certain level, and then they'll get frustrated and they can actually take it out on their dog and say, how come you can't do that, and how come you
Yeah.
can't do this? Well, I actually say to them, well, it's actually not the dog, it's you. Your dogs are like blank canvases.
Absolutely.
What you put into it, what you invest into their training, they will multiply that tenfold. Then, keep reminding them of how good they are, and, their little head tilts, because they look a little bit confused. That's because they are confused. You have
Yes.
to you have to kind of talk to them in a way that they understand.
And patience and kindness will get you a long
Absolutely.
way. And just changing your energy. If you've got a calm, steady energy as opposed to chaotic and off the Richter, annoyed, frustrated, you're going to get that response. Whether it's the same with how you deal with people, the
Yeah.
same with working with your dogs or your horses or whatever animal you're working with.
That's an excellent point, Romy, because we often say to a lot of them, because they feel like they have to train, or because we give them homework. But the one thing we always say to them, please don't try and train your dog when you're feeling like, you're having a really bad day, or you feel like throwing something, or it's just not, don't train your dog. Just leave it be. It's not going to set anything back. But if you try and train a dog when you're really, really peeved off, I mean, the dog is just going to aggravate you even more because it just doesn't understand, or it's actually picked up that you're really frustrated. And so it'll actually just shut down. And what it's trying to tell that person is, hey, listen, if you don't talk to me nice, I can't do anything. I don't understand what it is that you're trying to tell me. So I'm just going to shut down as well.
Is there anything that you need from anybody? $1 million, maybe? Anyone out there?
Is there, wow, is there a philanthropist out there, or $1 million, someone who's like a benefit? Like, we would love someone who's got a spare $1 million or something. Look, every donation is a great donation. We often have some people who, give us, it could be like between $50 to $100. And just as an idea, so we have someone who donates $100 a month to us, like a recurring. What that $100 actually does is it actually provides group training session for our remote recipients every month. So that's what they're doing. That's what their money is going towards. So we've got another person who, if they donate $50 a month, that actually goes towards. So we have like a scholarship trainer fund. So that's where that money goes to. And we also have, look, the smallest amount is fantastic as well. We have some people who do like a recurring donation of, say, like $5 or $10 a month. That actually gets pulled into a fund. We call it the crisis fund. So we actually have some recipients, because the dogs are extremely important. So if they can't pay for a vet bill, or they need something, we will use that money. So that's where those. So
Yes.
any donation is a great donation as far as we're concerned.
Yes, I'm
And
sure.
if anybody's got any, if they want to do a fundraiser for us, by all means, please contact us. It's been very difficult with fundraisers because of COVID, but we're actually going to Darwin this weekend to a fund. We went. They did one for us 2 years ago. I think it's called the Show and Shine in Darwin at Humpty Doo Hotel. But whatever money is raised from that, we generally, depending on the location, so if it's in Darwin, we'll actually use a chunk of that money to actually, so we've got a trainer over there, we've got recipients over there. So that will go towards, ensuring that they've got that continued training and support. other money could go towards purchasing more equipment, because like I said at the start, every recipient that comes into our program, they don't pay for anything. All training, all assessments, all equipment, everything is at no charge. That was the promise that Scott and I made when we started this charity, that they shouldn't. We were paying it forward to all those who served,
Yes.
and that's not just serving overseas or Australian Defence Force, but also those who serve in our community as well, such as police, first responders, and also the hidden responders, which are our correctional officers.
Yes, yes. Oh, you're doing such great work. It's been an absolute pleasure to have a chat with you, Liz. Thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you.
I've really enjoyed that, and I might even come to your October seminar. That sounds really interesting, actually.
Please do, Romy. That would be fantastic.
I would love that. Thank you. Thank you. Everybody else, you stay right there, because we have Nettie in the chat box, and Nettie is the mother of 21 guide dogs. So we're going to have a chat to her and see what she's up to. We'll be back in just a moment. The Animals Chat Box is the segment where I get to have a chat with some of our viewers' animals. Now, it's not a verbal conversation like I'd ordinarily have with someone. It's a conversation using the language of animals, where we transfer images, words, and feelings from one to the other. I can smell on behalf of an animal, I can taste what they taste, hear what they hear, I can feel in their body what they feel. And you can gather a lot of information communicating this way, from behavioural issues to emotional and mental health issues. I can taste their food, and I can feel in their body where they're unwell or where they're injured. This is often referred to as animal communication. Right now, we have some animals waiting for us in the chat box. Let's go see who they are and what they've got to say to us today.
So Nettie, our beautiful golden lab, has been a guide dog. So she worked as a guide dog for 8 years, and she provided them with a lot of puppies. So 21 puppies in total. She passed as a guide dog and went through the whole process to be a guide for them, but they wanted more of her temperament. That's why they used her as a breeding dog. So they loved that she was so gentle and sensitive and calm, that they wanted more of that. So that's what she did for 8 years. Now we've had her since she was 1, but she would go and come back. So now she's in retirement. She just spends her days hanging with us.
That sounds like a pretty good option, I think. And I think she's pretty happy with that. I first up want to say that she has a fascination. Fascination may not be the right word. She loves butterflies. I don't know if you've noticed that, but she's just a little bit mesmerized by them, and it brings absolute joy to her little doggy heart.
Mm-hmm.
Have you noticed her around butterflies at all?
Yeah, she gets really she's just really calm. When normally you think a dog would snap or bark or something, she just stands there and looks at them. She's quite mesmerized.
Yeah. She's just wanting to talk about being a guide dog mum. So I'm interested to hear what she's got to say about that, actually, and the number of puppies that she had, and whether that was a huge strain on her system. Oh, loved it. Absolutely loved it. That was her purpose. And she feels like she did that very well. She had a little bit of intolerance for some of the puppies along the way.
Oh my God, yes.
I want to say she ruled with an iron fist. She was very kind and very fair and very loving and a great mother, but she would keep them in line at the same time.
Yeah.
She's commending herself for the way that she managed her children. She also was a little hard with them because she knows how the training goes, and that they needed to have a little bit of discipline prior to being taken from her.
Yep, that would make
So
sense.
she kind of upped the ante a little bit in a sense, which is pretty cool.
Because she knew.
Smart.
She certainly took her job very seriously, and she thoroughly enjoyed that, and she was glad when it was all over. She was exhausted. She said that she could have done 2 less litters. How many a year was that?
So that was actually only 3 litters. Her first litter was massive. So, she started out with 9, and they were all born alive and healthy. So her first litter was her feeding 9 babies. So her welcome to motherhood was an emergency cesarean, and then 9 babies she had to feed whilst trying to recover from that. So it's a lot. When she eats, she spends a lot of time licking her lips directly after, almost like she feels queasy. And I've mentioned that to doctors and things like that, and they're just like, oh, it's just the way she is.
The first thing that I'm getting shown is probiotics. I feel really, really queasy. Many animals have problems with biscuits and canned food. I'm not feeling good with whatever she's eating.
Okay.
Absolutely loves where she is. She loves the walk that you take her on where the water is. She loves that. Not just the the environment and all that sort of stuff, but the actual sound. The sound of that water in her ears is quite therapeutic. I actually want to say sedative. Have you cut her claws lately?
They're due for another trim. I usually, although I can do them, I usually have somebody else do that for me. So that's due.
Yes, she's just reminding you. I see her collapsing on the inside. So whatever her nail structure is, I see her collapsing a little bit on the inside when they get too long.
Okay.
And then my shoulders kind of, there's a lot of different tensions through the shoulder muscles.
Between 11 and sort of 3 in the morning, she'll wake up, kind of tear around the living room, roll around on her back, tear into my room, and just stand there and stare at me. And I'm like bursting, you're forced to be awake like it's a child. And then I immediately just think she needs to go outside to the toilet because she doesn't have a doggy door. So I take her outside. She maybe do her business, maybe not, come back a few minutes later, and then she'll just go to sleep. So I don't know what that's about. And then on our walks, she's very sniffy. She used to be very controlled, as you can imagine, as a guide. She couldn't do that. That wasn't part of her training. So, but now over the years of me just being like, you're retired, do whatever you want. The nose is down the whole time. There's not a whole lot of taking in the environment visually. It's all in the nose.
This is like being in a lolly shop. This is great also. So this is interesting because I keep going into the lungs. This is like exercise for the lungs. They love sniffing stuff. Don't ever stop her from sniffing, and don't think that there's anything wrong with her. She doesn't need to look. That's her looking. She's looking with her nose. Devouring is the word she's given me, just devouring the smells. So it's not really more intense. This is how she would have been from a puppy if she was allowed to sniff like this.
Okay.
This is her normal behavior.
Okay.
I want to have a look at the emotional lungs, actually. There's a lot of sadness that goes back to losing her mother. Animals have emotional health issues too, mental health issues. So we don't really consider that, especially as a breeder. It's 8 weeks and off you go, or even less sometimes, which is even worse. But, it's still her mum, and she had a connection to her. She grew up in her and whatnot. And so there's a bit of sadness there. As she's letting go, because the sniffing relates to the lungs, and as she's now, I can sniff and I'm not going to get in trouble for it, the lungs are letting go a little bit. So there is some sadness in there, and it's just processing. I don't see it to be, there's no sort of trauma and grief and any of those types of things. It's just almost a physical response to this sense of being allowed 100% to do whatever she wants.
Wow.
So it's really interesting.
Yeah, that is very interesting. And I would have thought she would have crossed that sooner. Like, she hasn't been a guide for, over a year, and she hasn't been into the centre for anything for over a year. But I guess it is a process, and it takes time for her to get used to her new life. Whereas I assumed that would have happened really fast. But it makes me see things in a different light from her perspective.
Yeah, totally. And this is the beauty of animal communication, because we can actually see the different perspectives of it, and then we can understand them better. Sniffing is almost like running for a dog. Their lungs are working a lot while they're sniffing furiously at stuff. She's getting more oxygen in, so she's got a lot more energy. I want to say she's got energy to burn. And there is a part, not all of it, but a part of that is her enthusiasm for the evening. Let's say. Let's have a look at the rest of that scenario. She's up. She is ready to go. It's like Christmas Day in the morning. I feel so good at 11 o'clock at night. I'm excited, and I want everyone to be up and excited with me. Let's go and play. It's like, I want to go that room and get that one up, that room and get that one up, get that one up, get everybody up, and let's all start the day together at 11 p.m. At a glance, I don't see anything wrong with her. She is just enthusiastic and just hanging out on life. It's good. Everything is good. And she said it's only humans that have time frames. Just because the sun goes down doesn't mean that life stops. Well, thank you, Nettie. Thank you, Emma, for joining me tonight. It's been absolutely great hearing from someone that has had a very, very busy birthing centre. I don't know. What do you call that? Let's say birthing centre. That's the safest for online and on air. We'll be back in just a moment, everyone. Don't go anywhere.
Make your day richer with The Richard Wilmore Show. Meet amazing musicians, talented actors, brilliant authors, hilarious comedians, and the most creative people in entertainment. Download the KP Media TV app to watch on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire.
It's that time again, everyone. The show is now over. Apparently, all good things come to an end. Now, don't forget, share the show with your friends, subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow the pages. Thank you for watching. I'm Romy Bueller. I will see you back here next week.